All right, so again, I mentioned my name is Julie Miller. I'm at AARP. As many of you likely know, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization committed to making sure that all people can live their best lives as they age. We care about health, we care about wealth, we care about work, we care about care, learning, fun, and making sure that all people have abilities to thrive over time. So, you may ask yourself, AARP, parenting, huh? Really? Well, we want to dig today into some of these connections between parenting and aging and put together what it means for all of us, including in financial services in particular. So let's do just a quick scan of the room. Where are the parents of kids over the age of 18 here? Would you raise your hands? Beautiful. Okay, so these are some of our experts today. Now, for the folks who just raised their hands, I'm going to put you on the spot, okay? Totally unfair question. I'm going to put it out there. How are you doing? How are you? Thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down. Let's see. This is very, this is a validated instrument, as you can see. Kidding. Okay, so we have an interesting mix. Interesting. Okay. Separately, or maybe not so separately, where are the caregivers in the room today? Someone who may be taking care or supporting an aging family member or someone else in their family. Okay, so again, look around the room. These are our experts this morning. If you just raised your hand, again, how are you doing? Thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down. Okay, so look around, thank you. And how about who is sandwiched or paninied, as I have heard, doing both? Who here is parenting or supporting in some way, shape, or form? You can keep your hands up, please. A child or children over the age of 18 and another loved one, maybe an aging family member. Okay, so again, these are our experts in the room. Please find each other later. Maybe this can be the beginning of some kind of amazing conversation group or something else. You never know. Maybe you can find a drink or something later with each other. All right. So thank you for that. Here's the thing. We are all experts in this room in our own rights on this topic of parenting. And why is that? Is because we all have families. We all connect with this topic differently, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means for us today. So, why parenting? Why aging? Longevity changes everything. Longevity changes how we can and need to be thinking about preparing for the future and for longer lives, including parenting. I want to share just a few quick light bulb moments for me, places where I thought to myself, I don't feel like I am reading much or seeing much about this intersection of parenting and aging. I have certainly myself, with my own experience with my family over time, been fascinated with the intersection of families and finances, disability included. I have marveled at watching, particularly I would say my mentors over time, go from having kids over the past 15 or so years who were at one point little kids and are now not so little kids, and hearing about some of their experiences, some of their joys, some of their struggles. When I was working before joining AARP at the MIT Age Lab on a dissertation about student loan repayment and aging, I had an opportunity to learn from parent after parent who was repaying student loans for a child or children. And that, again, was a light bulb moment for me of, what does it mean to be supporting adult children while also hopefully being able to plan for one's own longer life? Another light bulb moment, or series of light bulb moments for me, has been both experiencing firsthand in my family, and then with any of our experiences, personal experiences, reading the news, etc., with the opioid crisis over the past number of years. Also around how the pandemic, in many ways, has thankfully fueled opportunities for us to be able to talk about mental health in different ways. These, again, are some of the intersections in which I've thought to myself, okay, so we know that there are some tectonic shifts in what it means to be growing up these days in the United States, what does it mean then to be parenting in the United States, including as we are hopefully living longer and healthier lives? And then one more thing I want to share, just to tee us up for some context. This was a number of years ago. I had, as you can hear, been thinking about this topic of parenting and aging, and what does this mean for all of us, and do we have the support that parents need over time? I sat down with a woman who was probably in her late 50s, early 60s, was describing her two kids, who were in their 20s or so, and she shared now her own story that through research that I had done with colleagues at AARP has come up time and time again, and that is that there is no one path, as we all know, when it comes to parenting. And so for her, sharing about how one of her kids in their early 20s has had a pretty straightforward path, you know, in her words, that he was working, pretty financially responsible, quote, sometimes I need to just request money from him on Venmo for his portion of our family cell phone plan, or for his portion of the car insurance premiums. That's interesting. If we think about financial interdependence and what that looks like in families and how technology connects us, I wanted to learn more about that. She also shared about her other child, her daughter, who had had a more complicated path, returning home after 1 year of college, struggling to find an entry-level job. That mom was still momming, well into her 50s or so. So again, what does that mean? When we think about parenting adult kids in the US these days, what part of the parenting experience is timeless, and what part of the experience is timely? We're going to be talking about all of these this morning. I want to ask you another question. When does adulthood start? Is it when we're old enough to vote? Is it when our brains are fully developed? Is it, and this is for my Gen X friends in the room, is it when we're old enough to maybe let ourselves into the house and make a meal for ourselves? And so again, Gen Xers, you may say, hi, I was 12 years old when I was doing that. So I was an adult at 12. Jeffrey Arnett, a psychologist, talks about emerging adulthood, generally between the ages of 18 and 29, as really a staging ground for adulthood, a feeling of in-between. We know over time that this period of 18 to 29 is extending longer, right? Jeffrey Arnett describes the 3 criteria for reaching adulthood as, and again, for my parents of 18-plussers in the room, I hope that you'll appreciate this, and I want to hear your thoughts about this. 3 criteria: accepting responsibility for yourself, making independent decisions, becoming financially independent. Wow, what does that look like now? And how is that differently complicated these days than it has been in the past? We also know, everyone, that we are, of course, living in a world shaped by our broader social and economic landscape. So things like shifts in costs of education, climbing costs of housing, climbing costs of care, are different ways in which we connect with technology, conversations about identity and mental health, disability, race, shifting demographics in the US, not to mention, supposedly over the next 20 or so years, about $124 trillion in wealth transfer, likely to move to the exact folks that we're talking about, of people in their right now 20s, 30s or so. So with that said, as we look at longer lifespans, as we look at parenting adult kids, we're talking actually about the longest stage of parenthood. These days, people with our longevity bonuses that we get to enjoy, we know that more people can expect to spend the most time parenting their kids when they are over the age of 18 compared with when they are under the age of 18. That's a game changer, right? We also know that parenting is one of the hardest and most complicated roles, and yet there's really so little training, formal training in how to make that happen. It's not like there's a degree in parenting that we get, or a micro-credential, or any kind of specific training beyond what, one-offs that we can do online, or maybe at the hospital as we're getting ready to welcome a baby. Roles for parents have changed over time, and again, we're going to explore that today. I loved having a conversation with one of my children's teachers who said, you know, if I think about this topic of parenting these days and where my kids are, you know, I think about how when kids are little, your job as a parent is to be their guardian, to keep them safe, to keep them alive. We have things at that point like parental leave, if we're, I'm gonna do air quotes, everybody, lucky. Robotic cribs. We have smart socks to keep track of baby's heart rate these days and oxygen levels. Over time, he's describing as kids get older, parents fill into the role more of guide, helping kids learn and make good choices. And so that time in parenting may include lots more living in your car. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Driving kids to and fro, supporting their learning and development, and that as kids move into this emerging adulthood phase and later, that likely includes role of coach or mentor, navigating relationships, navigating career choices, financial health, and so much more these days. So raise your hand if you've heard this expression, little people, little problems. Anybody? Okay, I have a lot of feelings about that expression. We can talk about that at a later time. But here is my question for you all. If we, as a society, can talk about this idea of, you know, when kids are little, their needs are pretty straightforward. Little people, little problems. What are we doing to solve for some of the bigger problems? What does that look like? And again, if we think about financial health, what does it mean to get there? So here are some of my main questions that I'm hoping will guide our conversation today and hopefully some conversation with the group. What is it like to parent adult kids these days? What are some of the joys and the struggles? What are the differences across families, cultures, and situations? What are the implications for financial preparedness, for longevity? And finally, what are the opportunities and the calls to action for all of us here? Over this past year, I have had the pleasure of working with colleagues at AARP Research to do focus groups and to field a survey of about 2,000 parents in the United States of kids over the age of 18. We explored financial interdependence within families, and I want to just put out a few little kind of data breadcrumbs to stir the pot a little bit, and then we'll dive into conversation. Here's what we found. Most parents, ages 45 plus, who we heard from, are providing financial support to one or more of their adult children over the age of 18. I'm gonna look for some head nods to see if this resonates. Okay, all right, everyone's like, yeah, hello, got it. Of the parents who said, yes, I'm providing financial support to one or more adult child, we found that about 30% of them were providing technology or communication support. So that can be things like paying for a cell phone bill, paying for the Netflix streaming account, right? Any number of the different ways in which technology lives in our lives. 25% were supporting kids financially through transportation. And that could be buying a car, letting an adult child use a car regularly, paying for car insurance, registration, et cetera, et cetera. 20% provided housing support. From the folks that we heard from, 50% had an adult child living at home. From the folks that we heard from, about 1/3 who are providing support to an adult child have an adult child with a diagnosed emotional or behavioral health condition, a learning difference, a medical condition, a physical disability, or an intellectual or developmental disability. And, interestingly, grandparents, any grandparents in the room? Awesome, awesome. Or not, you could tell me about that later. Among parents providing financial support, many have grandchildren, for which roughly 40% are providing financial support for one or more of them, as well as just under 25% providing childcare for grandchildren not in their custody. So there are amazing ways in which across families we are looking at and needing to understand support, including financial support. Okay, almost done. So I just laid out some ways in which we are financially interdependent in different ways in our families, right? Here's what's interesting. Almost 40% of parents said that both the emotional stress and the financial stress of parenting a child over the age of 18 was greater than it was compared with when their child was under the age of 18. So that speaks to some of those, again, what some people might say is little people, little problems phenomena. That said, the majority of parents of kids over the age of 18 say that they are happy to be able to help financially support their children. In general, what we actually heard from parents is, this is okay, we're good, we're all good here. And yet, only about 5% of these parents providing financial support say that they feel like they know where they could go if they needed help or advice when it comes to parenting. And that includes financial help or advice. So everybody, I put a lot out there. Here's my question. What's going on here? What's going on? My hope this morning is that we can dive into some great conversation. It is going to be skimming the surface, but it is hopefully going to open up a window for us to dive deeper, to talk about some of these really fascinating issues that come with parenting. I want to make a couple of things super duper clear, and hopefully the way that I have been framing this is the case already. We, in no way, shape, or form, want to be casting some of these connections that we're talking about around financial support in families as a bad thing. This is certainly not by any means necessarily a bad thing. We know that across different households, different families, different cultures, there are rich and deep and beautiful traditions that come with financially supporting and otherwise supporting children longer and later. And that often it's that kind of support that we all need as we age. So I want to make that super clear. That said, this is an opportunity for all of us to be curious together. So that was a longer intro than I intended, but hopefully interesting to kick us off. So with all of that said, I'm going to turn to our fabulous panelists here, and I'm going to ask you all to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us one word that comes to mind as we dig into today's conversation. Denise, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Denise Barham, and I'm the founder of Adulting Highway, where I teach life skills to teens and adults ranging from like 14 up to 29 to help develop life skills so they can enter adulthood with confidence.
And what would you say one word?
I would say navigation.
Okay. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Emily Watson. I'm with TIA, more specifically the TIA Institute, a think tank within TIA that focuses on financial wellness, and we explore this through partnerships and research, in particular diving into barriers and hiccups along the life course that may impede financial security to and through retirement. And my word would be hopeful.
Good morning. My name is Raymond Jetson, and I am with Aging While Black, a movement that is focused on disrupting the aging ecosystem so that Black elders are able to thrive in every area of life in America. And my two words are my reality.
Thank you. We are missing today Maria Camarillo, who's at the National Disability Institute, and we're going to do our damnedest to include just a few of her amazing key points that she sent. Please do check out, though, either during the session or afterward, the app, and you can see some beautiful resources that she has included there, along with multiple of our other panelists. Okay. We know that there are many social and economic forces shaping and factoring into relationships between parents and their adult kids these days. What would you call out as one of those forces? Raymond, let's start with you, please.
Ask the question once again.
What would you call out as one of these major social or economic forces shaping relationships these days with parents and adult kids?
This drive toward really your children grasping what it means to be financially independent, and in a world where that has so many meanings and they are influenced on so many forums through so many different vehicles, and so truly trying to co-create with them an understanding of what it means to navigate this world financially.
Emily, how about you?
I would say stress. So as we're living longer, it requires new ways to plan and save, as Julie identified. But that also puts a tremendous amount of pressure to earn and save at higher rates. And that comes directly in conflict with the time and dedication it takes to act as a caregiver for either a child or family member or an elder. And I think that really there's a bidirectional relationship between financial wellness and mental health. They both impact each other, and I think that's really driving a lot of these dynamics.
Awesome, thank you. Denise?
I would say cost of living, because a lot of these realities that we're facing today shapes how young adults and their parents are making decisions, whether they're delaying moving out, returning home after college, or needing help financially while into their 20s or even into their 30s.
Beautiful, thank you so much. Emily, you touched on this a bit just now. When you think about what it means to prepare for longevity these days, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that come to mind for you when you layer on shifting dynamics between aging parents and adult kids?
So I would just say that a lot of the longevity dynamics most obviously show up in most recognizable ways when we're caring for our elders. But I would just say that I think we really need to be restructuring how we're saving, learning, and earning across all life stages. Longevity, while it's showing up because we have family members who have a longevity bonus, increased years of life, how are we helping the early adults or the mid-career adults prepare for living longer with these dynamics that we're more reactively approaching? For example, we know that young adults are redefining the future of work. They're graduating and not expecting to stay in the same career for 40 years. They want to have gap years, maybe 10 years in. What does that mean for finances? What does that mean for caregiving? What does that mean for supporting and building a family? And what's interesting is that despite with young adults being digital natives, they still use analog sources for financial advice, which may no longer be sufficient. Going to friends or parents, navigating this new reality that parents or their elders may not have the answers to, since we're all in this room talking about this. And then you move to mid-career, where we talked about some of these financial constraints, but 8 to 20% of working parents, 8 to 20% of working parents' income is spent on childcare. How can we also be saving for the future, building an emergency fund? And increasingly, people are having kids later. So that means you might have an infant and also an aging parent or an aging grandparent. And so the sandwich generation, as Julie said, the panini generation, is happening for a longer period of time, which has real financial trade-offs. And so when we're thinking about more established career professionals and your children are older, as Julie mentioned, I've also seen figures between 50 to 59% of adults are supporting their children into age 34. And so parenting is taking longer financial considerations than traditionally factored into models. And then closing out with kind of the traditional elder caregiving, whether you're a sandwich generation or not, there are a lot of hidden costs that are not easily prepared for. We know that caregiving for elders can be at least $7,000 out of pocket, and that can just go up even higher if there are cognitive aging issues to address or physical disabilities, not to mention the in-kind of the time of driving to appointments, the time to do paperwork. And it also has workforce issues. You're more likely to maybe decline a promotion. You have more absenteeism from work because of these additional issues on top of the stress and the financial output. So this has serious long-term financial security issues, and as a retirement company, we're always thinking about what are the financial security issues. And so from reduced income to reduced benefits, the caregivers are often acting as a great family member, a great daughter, and aren't self-identifying as caregivers, yet we're also seeing increased holistic financial planning support being more commonplace, as well as increased benefits in the community and in our employers' benefits packages that are maybe going less used because we're not identifying as caregivers. We're not thinking about, I think it's called adult, it's not adult daycare, but it's like a backup care for elders as well.
Elder care.
And so and so there are a lot of financial resources that are going underutilized because there are so many parts that we assume are given in taking on this role that we're not fully supporting ourselves and preparing for.
Wow, Emily, you have brought up amazing points, and I'm curious, Denise, from your perspective with Adulting Highway, what some of the intersections are. Would you be willing to share with us a little bit about some of Adulting Highway's greatest hits, workshops, and how parents factor in?
Yeah, what resonated with me, what Emily just said, is that people don't see themselves as caregivers, but they also don't see themselves as still parenting, and they really are. Whether 22 to 29-year-old or higher, it just looks different now, and it comes with a lot of emotional and financial weight, as we know, as we're talking about. But some of our most requested, it's always the parents. Let me start with this. It's always the parent who finds me on the internet, finds me by word of mouth. I'm adultinghighway.com, and they're trying to navigate. That's why I like my Adulting Highway, because they're navigating this, their adult child through this, but trying to co-pilot but not take the wheel with them. And that's really hard because I think a lot of parents don't want to see their child fail. So if their child can't do it, they try to do it for them. And that's where I come in and say, you need to, I hate to say this, stop enabling them, but they need to kind of start standing on their own. The classes I teach, and right now I do online personal one-on-one lessons where I tailor the lesson to the client based on the information they give me. So I do budgeting and finance, basics, broad stroke stuff, because a lot of them don't know what they don't know, and I don't want to overwhelm them. So I start with the very big basics. I talk about pay stubs, how to read a pay stub, looking at your deductions, what those mean, taxes, how they calculate taxes, very broad strokes, because taxes can make people's eyes roll to the back of their head. W-2s, W-9s, all these things that they're going to encounter, they probably heard about, but don't know what they are and don't know what to ask and don't really think about it until, they experience it. I also talk about budgeting in very broad strokes, about cost of living. Nowadays, kids, you're not going to move out at 18 and get your own one-bedroom apartment. You're going to have roommates. I also teach roommate etiquette because that's their reality. A lot of them have lived with mom and dad. Mom and dad or mom probably has been picking up after them. Now they're going to have to do it themselves. So basic stuff. I also teach professional etiquette, getting their first job. I just started teaching resume writing and interviewing skills. So I'm kind of evolving with it too, as the parents reach out to me and ask me, I need help, my child needs help. And that's kind of where I've found my company on, because before I was in the Navy for 20 years. So one thing about the military is the lives of your sailors on and off duty become your responsibility. If they're in financial trouble, any type of trouble, you as a leader have to help them out of it. So I got a lot of experience with sailors being sailors. Let's put it that way. And I was an enlisted sailor, so I understand, and then I was also an officer. So I've got the experience of both sides. Then I went into work for Cal State San Marcos, and I went to a research presentation by a group of students who talked about the need for adulting lessons. And I'm sitting there just like you are, watching these students present, and I'm like, like light bulb, and I quit my job a year later and started this company because I found it's, and I've been successful at it. And everything I've heard when a parent reaches out to me is like, we need this. When I tell people what I do, oh my gosh, we need this. This is so important what you do. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at and what I do and how I help. And it's been very interesting because I've worked with a autistic 25-year-old. I've worked with a woman who's 29 and just her parents kind of just helped her along too much and she cannot, function without their help. So, and I've worked with teens who are, their parents kind of force them to go there because as a parent, you talk, right? One ear out the other kid. But if someone else says the same thing to your kid, that makes sense. My parents aren't stupid. So I get a lot of that. It's been fun. It's very interesting, and I really, really enjoy what I do.
Awesome. Wow. Denise, thanks so much. And the website, one more time, if anybody's curious, please.
Adultinghighway.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I do virtual one-on-one Zoom lessons, too, so.
You heard it first, everybody. Thanks, Denise. So again, Maria Jamarillo at National Disability Institute cannot be here, unfortunately, but NDI, for those who don't know, champions economic empowerment, financial education, asset development, and financial stability for all people with disabilities. She wanted to make sure that we mention today that as we talk about prolonged parenting, we are also talking about increasing lifespans of adult children with disabilities and of adults with disabilities in general. She wanted me to share that 44 million people in the United States live with a disability, and that 1/4 of US households have a member of the household with a disability. She wanted to share a bit today about some of the layers for parents, and we're going to be hearing now a bit more about some of these layers from Raymond. Specifically, what she wanted to mention is that it's a really fine line for parents of not wanting to jeopardize an adult child with a disability's eligibility for certain public benefits. She talked about the importance of accessing quality advice and products and tools like ABLE accounts, special needs trusts, wills, standby guardianship, and she mentioned circles of support, and Raymond may touch on that as well. So, with that said, Raymond, I'd like to hear your perspective as a parent and a caregiver, and everyone, I should mention, you are going to be hearing from Raymond Jetson on main stage later this afternoon. Get ready, everybody. Raymond, our research has found, I mentioned this, that sandwiched parents, those who are providing support to an adult child and caring for another loved one, let's say an aging family member, are notably more likely to have kids with health challenges or diagnoses of disabilities than non-caregivers, making their support role and financial considerations that much more multifaceted. Would you walk us, Raymond, a block or two in your shoes as a sandwiched parent and caregiver? How has the path changed for you over time, and what is it like now?
So thank you for the question. I am Jerica Nicole's dad. Jerica was born 34 years ago with Cornelia de Lange syndrome, developmental delays, deformities of digits, and other realities of her lived experience. And there is this moment at which it clicks that I am going to have to provide for every aspect of her life for as long as she's alive. And whatever budgeting, whatever financial planning that I had underway is now seriously altered. And I have to begin to rethink what that looks like. While at the same time navigating, Jerica was able to qualify for Medicaid waiver services early in her life. And so now I have to navigate not only our family's finances in supporting her, but doing it in such a way that we don't trip any of the wires that make her now ineligible for these services that are absolutely critical for her life and her well-being. One of my observations is that as we attempted to navigate this, the financial services industry more broadly was not prepared to necessarily advise us or to provide for us instruments, tools, resources that were able to help us navigate the set of circumstances that we were facing. And then there is, you talk about parenting and longevity, there is this moment that it dawns that if I precede my child in death, I need to make plans to parent even when I'm not here anymore, to make certain that she is that she is well. And so while you are going along navigating all of this, then my then 88-year-old mother falls, and now this fiercely independent woman is ambulating on a walker, and I am her only living child. I am now her primary caregiver. And so you are balancing both of those, trying to understand her financial situation, how to navigate all of that. And so it becomes a very interesting daily existence that's rooted in complex questions and realities that somewhere along the way I didn't think that I would be wrestling with at this point.
So powerful. Thank you, Raymond, for sharing that. We're going to hear more this afternoon about aging while Black. Would you mind just giving a bit of a teaser for us into some of the connections that you would draw between the work of Aging While Black and our conversation this morning?
Well, one of the nuances here when we talk about this parenting and longevity and the dynamics associated with it, it is not unusual in African American communities that the parent is actually a grandparent, which brings another set of realities into the conversation. But also many of the challenges associated with retirement security, debt levels, and other things which are historically rooted in systems and structures that have impacted Black people in this country have just severe implications when it comes to this parenting and longevity. And as a personal aside, I will be sending you an email. There's a 27-year-old that I need you to talk to.
Great. Thank you. Well, everyone, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left, and so in the spirit of making sure that we hear from those in the room and can get our panelists in conversation with each other and with you, I have a few big topics I want to put out, some questions, and want to hear your thoughts, your responses, your comments. So, in no particular order, we can free associate a little bit. Technology plays a huge role in all of our lives these days. How do you all see technology factoring into financial relationships and families, and how would you like to see technology do the most good for financial health across generations in the future? Hold that, okay? Here's another question I'll put out there. What's the role of employers? And what would you say in general, if we look across financial services? We've talked about some of the major issues at play here. In the spirit of moving towards solutions, what would you like to see more of as we look ahead, and who can or should be the people to make this happen? So again, putting out some big, broad topics, constructs. Would love to hear anyone's thoughts in response to those, or maybe other questions or reactions that you have. We have a mic back here.
I could kick us off on some, so circling back to my word of hopeful at the beginning, I'm really hopeful that a lot of the tech innovation that we're seeing and we're all navigating every day from, in particular with AI, can work in concert to complement human advice and also democratize financial advice from an individual standpoint. I'd love to see a future where we can have thoughtful, accurate financial literacy at the fingertips of young adults or young families navigating these new different dynamics where systems haven't yet caught up, that can help them feel like experts to navigate with dignity, and also help financial advisors with the nuance and new dynamics that their clients may be facing that maybe they've not previously experienced. And also, I would say also help democratize advice from the perspective that most people do not view themselves as a financial advice eligible. And it actually, what we found is that most people, regardless of income level, always think it's the next income level up to seek advice, when there are so many affordable options for any life stage and income level to seek advice to help people come up with a plan that also we know will reduce financial mental stress in this new dynamic that we're all navigating.
So I think that technology is unbelievably important. I think that we also have to be sensitive to the biases that are inherent in much of the technology. And when we ignore the importance of culture in the tools that we bring to market, we oftentimes inadvertently perpetuate the very disparities that we are attempting to address through these innovations that we bring to market. And so don't underestimate the importance of culture and co-creation and co-design in innovations that we bring to market that are intended to impact the well-being of people.
Thank you. Yeah, question in the back or comment.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that I think of all of the percentages, Julie, you mentioned about what's happening with adults. I had only one thing on that list, which was that we're still paying for my son's auto insurance. But my son and daughter, at least they checked off and doing their own thing, so which is very, very positive. But on the technology scale, I think about my aging parents. I just lost my father, who's almost 90. My mom's doing great at 87. But from a technology standpoint, my father never could understand using a flip phone, an iPhone, any of that. And from a stroke from many years ago, his hands shook, so it just was an impossibility. So, he didn't bank for a very long time, thinking my mother did that. But I think it is a fallacy that for even younger people, that they will be technologically able to actually utilize all of this new technology, because it's just, they didn't grow up with it. It's just not going to happen. And so I think, thankfully, we live near my parents, so we can help out in a lot of ways, and my kids are nearby, so they can help too. But I think it's a real mistake to put all of our marbles in that bucket, because so many people will not be able to navigate that. And who is going to be there to help them do so if their children aren't nearby or don't care enough to help do so?
Would you mind introducing yourself briefly too?
I'm sorry, I'm Valerie Navy Daniels. I'm with NeighborWorks America.
Valerie, thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Valerie, because something that Maria wanted us to pass along is the importance of really embedding universal design principles in the development of fintech. So very, very aligned with what you said. Maybe two more comments. Yeah. And then do we have one more person after that? This has been such a great conversation, and I hope that we can continue it today. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Carolina Souza. I'm from Prudential Financial, and I do some work in the intersection of business innovation and corporate social responsibility. So I have two comments around technology that is always top of mind for me. One is I have an Asian mom, and now with the growth of fraud and scams, that is for a generation that didn't grow up using the technology but now have to rely on technology, is of big concern. And my second one is I'm a parent of a teenager, and it's quite the opposite. The teenager grew up relying heavily on technology and knows how to use technology better than me or anybody in our household. But in a world where AI is replacing jobs and being human, and human skills are very, very more important than ever, I'm often concerned that my child is not developing the human aspect of his, skills and to really navigate a life, right? Because he's using too much technology. So those are some things that top of mind for me.
Thank you. Yeah, Denise, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because honest to God, I use AI on some of my presentations to help kind of make my thought processes more clear. But yeah, the social aspect of growing up and learning those skills, I don't think they're getting so much like they used to, because they're more digital natives, like, because they're always on their phone and they're not interacting with people like they used to. And even the small interactions, they start to grow emotionally. They learn more emotional intelligence that way. They're not going to learn that being in front of their phone. So yeah, a lot of my lessons that I kind of talk about is emotional intelligence. And part of my lesson I teach about professionalism and work etiquette is that, on how to relate to people, how to be inclusive, how to conduct yourself, because everyone has a phone, and they have to realize you can't be on your phone at work, So simple stuff like that human aspect of talking to other people, making eye contact with them. Believe it or not, shaking hands. They don't shake hands, or if they do, it's real, they don't know if they should initiate, or they give you this, and it's amazing to me. But also talking on the phone, speaking on the phone. If they're in a admin role, being able to speak on the phone clearly and have a human contact, So yeah, that all plays into it, because a lot of them don't have that interaction that we did as growing up, and having to talk to our parents at the dinner table and our friends and stuff, because when they're at lunch at school or they're at the dinner table, a lot of times they're on their phones. So getting that human connection is part of it as well.
And layering on, I'm thinking too, Denise, with the pandemic and the number of years
Yes.
that kids were at home and what that means. Thank you for bringing that up, and thanks, Denise. So everyone, we are at time. Here's what I want to leave you with. Number one, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Again, I know just skimming the surface. Thank you to our amazing panelists. And while we do not have a roadmap for the longest stage of parenting, to the adulting highway, right? This morning, I really do believe is one of those opportunities, and hopefully can be laying the groundwork even more to be figuring out what are the stops on the road, what are the tools that we need to be driving safely and to be having the best driving experience, all of us. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to the Financial Health Network. Thank you.